Well, good afternoon, everyone. Before we get started, we want to make sure that we do the land acknowledgement just so that we can consider the people who actually are the natural custodians of our land. And so first of all, we acknowledge the Tutelo Monacan people who are the traditional custodians of the land on which we work and live, and recognize their continuing connection to the land, water, and air that Virginia Tech consumes. We pay respect to the Tutelo Monacan nations and to their elders past, present, and emerging. And so first of all, today we're going to be talking about the interview process as well as career and professional development, job search resources and tools specifically for our high school students. However, I generally provide the same exact presentation directly to our college students, but I do want to definitely take into consideration some of the different experiences that you might be going through as high school students. So first of all, we're going to talk about the interview process, but first I want to introduce myself. My name is Weston Jamari Trust. I am an Assistant Director of Diversity Initiatives and Community Outreach with Professional Development, and my role is designed to have an even greater impact over underrepresented and underserved communities across campus by specifically working with each of the cultural and community centers, and also working with the Student Opportunities Achievement Resources, better known as SOAR, also the Multicultural Academic Opportunities Program, where I am also the liaison. And I do quite a bit of work with each of the CCCs, all of these variety of different groups, as well as other groups across campus. So if you ever see me around campus, especially if you do end up deciding to go to Virginia Tech or coming here to Virginia Tech, you will likely see me also as a career advisor, where I work specifically to develop students professionally, as well as within career services pertaining to their resume, job search resources, interviewing, salary negotiation, etc. And so if you ever have any of those questions as well, please feel free to reach out, and I'm always excited to be able to help out. And so first of all, we're going to be talking about the interview process, as well as I will be describing ways to best prepare for the interview process, as well as to introduce the job search and internship process tools that are available to you right now, but also if you do decide to become a Virginia Tech student as well. And so the things that we're going to learn, of course, we will learn how to prepare for those interviews, or how to respond to interview questions, as well as learn what to do after the interview takes place. And so before the interview, you definitely want to make sure that you think about how you really want to know yourself. So one of the first things that I think is so very much important is really understanding your education as well as your background. Yes, as a high school student, you might not necessarily be in a bachelor's program where you know that I'm going directly into a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering, or going into a Bachelor of Science in Pre-Med or something of that nature. But all of those various experiences that you're gaining right now as a high school student is all part of your education. Along with your work background, maybe you work at the local gas station, or you had the opportunity to participate in a shadow program at the local hospital or the medical group that you might have friends working there. So all of those things are things that you want to make sure that you encapsulate beyond just simply your resume, your cover letter. And although right now you probably don't necessarily have a lot of material to add to your cover letter or your resume, but that's completely fine. So you just really have to learn to vocalize some of these different experiences that you gain, and then also really try to tie in some of your goals. So what are your future professional goals? And also, what are the things that you're doing right now that you can talk about during your interview process? Also, your experiences. Your experiences don't necessarily have to just be, I go to X, Y, and Z school, as well as I've done this particular job opportunity. It can really include other things such as projects that you worked on. Also things that are internal and external to your experiences at your high school, such as your shadowing experience. And I will continue to stress that throughout this particular conversation, simply because, of course, that's really most what's important whenever I'm talking to high school students. And so generally is how can you articulate these experiences into something that's really relevant? Well, you are able to do that by just really trying to tie in together some of your clear experiences. So first of all, my name is Weston Jamari Trust, if I was you. And then of course, laying out your high school, along with from your high school, laying out your different projects and experiences that are and extracurricular activities that you've participated in while you're in school, along with, okay, what are your future professional goals and how does it directly relate or indirectly relate to the organization that you happen to have the opportunity to interview with? That's as simple as it gets. And usually for a high school student, your tell me about yourself question is only going to take about 30 to 40 seconds for the most part. And then of course, you were going to try to continue to expand that as we go ahead. And so, of course, number two is really trying to understand the employer. And I will also caveat to say that this is not just for your employer. So if you're doing scholarship applications, also if you're doing award applications, where they will tend to lead to an interview process, well, first of all, you need to really research the company or organization or the scholarship. And so what exactly are they looking for so that I can be most apt to actually think about this particular opportunity and how I can potentially vocalize it. Number two is really looking directly at the job description and job responsibilities. And so I will also include looking directly at the requirements for the award application that you're submitting. Also looking directly for what are the specific requirements for the university that you're applying to, for that specific program. A number of them have quite a bit of requirements that they're going to look for, at least in terms of the type of student that they're looking for. So you really want to be able to think about how best to vocalize your experiences all together as you're looking for various opportunities, whether it be full-time employment or part-time employment, or even for scholarships where you have to vocalize some of these different experiences. Number three, you want to make sure that you come up with questions that are covered in your research. You want to come directly search this company or organization, or even the scholarship application directly on the website that you are applying for the opportunity or award application with. And number four, you also want to make sure that you reach out to a current Hokie at the organization, generally if you are here at Virginia Tech, but also really as a high school student, reaching out to your family members, reaching out to your parents, because a lot of the times your parents will have a greater network than you do, of course, because you're a high school student. So let's say you want to go to Virginia Tech. Maybe your mother or father or even your guardian knows Dr. Nina Ha or someone within Virginia Tech so that they can actually explain to you the general process here at Virginia Tech. And so whenever you are making these applications, you'll begin to understand how best to vocalize some of these various experiences, articulate them a little bit better than you are currently, so that you can be on the right path to possibly convincing, as well as convincing the organization that you're going to be speaking with or interviewing with during this time frame. And so as we're thinking about that, what exactly is the employer thinking? So let's say you are applying to a job opportunity. And this can be for your local job opportunity, for the summer job that you're looking for, a graduate school application, all of these things that you might be having to interview with. So number one, they're always going to try to understand, are you the most capable person to do the job? Or are you the most capable candidate? And really, a lot of the times, yes, you are for the opportunity that you're applying to. And the reason why you are is because, of course, you generally would not make it to the interview process if you're not qualified. And so typically you just have to showcase the level of confidence within yourself to really be able to show, okay, I am the most capable person to do this job. I have a really good GPA. Even if I don't necessarily have the best GPA, I still have a good enough GPA to be able to articulate some of my various experiences, my projects that I've done before, also my current work experience, as well as other things that I'm involved in at school. So also number three, what am I able to bring to the table that other students are not able to do? So thinking more realistically about some of the things that you're doing can also help you in terms of really trying to figure out what exactly am I being able to bring to the table for this particular organization, this particular program that I'm looking into specifically for college, for my undergraduate degree. And then number four, can we see you as someone we will enjoy working with and fit into the company culture, or even fit into the program that you're applying into. And so generally, all of these answers hopefully need to be yes, along with a variety of different examples and experiences that you're able to articulate. And so if there are challenges there, of course, feel free to unmute yourself later on during the question and answer section, just to really be able to figure out, okay, what is the best way to really be able to respond to some of these different questions, because it can be very difficult. Because I remember whenever I was a high school student, and I was absolutely terrible at answering a number of these different questions, especially for my first time. And so just definitely want to make sure that we think about that, and also how can we exude some more confidence whenever we're talking to these variety of different stakeholders that we have to deal with. And so also, you want to make sure that you keep in mind, again, that you got through the initial part or the initial screening process. What does the initial screening process generally look like? Well, generally you have to submit a resume, as well as, especially if you're applying to certain scholarship applications, along with other things that might be important, you have to submit your resume, your GPA, along with a long list of your other extracurricular activities, especially coming out of high school. And so generally, if you made it to the interview process, that means they want to know, as well as meet you individually, because of course that means you have met the necessary qualifications to be there. And so they're just trying to figure out whether or not you fit within the company culture, or fit within the program, fit within the opportunity that you happen to be applying to, all of those variety of other things that could be very important for you as well. And so generally, yes, it's going to be very challenging, as well as very nerve-wracking whenever you have to interview one-on-one with the individual, or maybe interviewing with maybe two individuals for the specific program. A number of those things can be very challenging for you. And so those that's going to result in higher expectations, and it's going to be more pressure on you. But you will definitely want to make sure that you continue to get prepared for those different experiences. And so as we are thinking about that, so you really want to make sure that you have professional attire whenever you are interviewing with these individuals, whether it happens to be over Zoom or whether it happens to be in person. That is something significantly important. So you still want to make sure that you are wearing your business professional clothing generally, such as a suit and tie, or a blouse with a blazer, or whatever you deem appropriate. But you want to make sure that if you want to try to choose a more individualistic type of approach, making sure that you check with someone that you consider to be a more of a professional, just to check and see whether or not they deem what you're going to wear as business professional. Because a lot of the times, these first impressions will determine whether or not you are able to move forward in the process, or whether or not a lot of the times you will stay where you are and have to continue to look for other opportunities. And so really understanding the career field and industry is going to be very important, especially in thinking about business casual versus business professional. But in the instance where I'm thinking about high school students and you're applying for a bachelor's program, or having to meet with scholarship persons who are going to be giving away funds, you generally want to be business professional. I have to be honest with you. And so every instance that I'm thinking about at the moment for high school students would likely be business professional, as I think for my college students that I work with on a daily basis. And so first impressions are generally often long lasting, and they are very, people do use those to make decisions, frankly. So you definitely want to think about that. And so during the interview, you really want to think about, those first impressions do matter. So generally, if possible, you want to make sure that you have a firm handshake. And yes, a lot of the times I will recommend that you think about preparing with your family members, or preparing with someone that you feel comfortable doing a handshake with, just so they can tell you whether or not it's firm enough, as well as you recognizing that you don't want to be too difficult or too harsh on someone else's hand, but rather you want it to be firm whenever you are trying to communicate your level of confidence. Number two is making sure that you give eye contact during your interview process. Number three, making sure that if you are a person who give a lot of facial expressions, or your face really will tell a story based upon what you're thinking about a certain person, or your experience whenever you enter a certain space, then generally you want to make sure that you practice your facial expressions at home with a family member or a friend or someone that you trust, so that whenever you are preparing for your upcoming interview or something that's very important to you, and that you get it perfectly appropriate, especially within a first impression type of manner. Also, number four, if your body language your body language is where you're being somewhat distracting, similarly, where a person is just constantly moving up and down, especially with a chair like myself, where I have an office chair where it goes up and down constantly, or where I can go swing back and forth, those can be very distracting, especially during an interview process. And so you don't want people to be distracted by what you're doing, but rather you want them to be focused on the material that you're talking about. And so that's what's crucially important. Also, tone of voice. If you're a person who has a very strong, or not very strong sound, but rather like let's say you talk very softly, and it's not very audible, at least over the computer, as well as if you are in person, that can lead to very much challenges there. So you want to make sure that you elevate your voice if possible, and practice over, I guess, FaceTime or over Zoom, all of those different ways in which you can communicate to see whether or not if people can hear you. And so maybe getting on one end of the house or going into a room and then having your parents or your guardian or someone else that's important to you to be on the other end of the house just to see whether or not you are able to elevate your voice if you're very soft spoken, so to speak. And so sense can also be something that's crucially important, especially if you're going in person. So you want to make sure that you don't have too many much cologne or too much perfume on, because of course some people's noses are very sensitive, and beyond just being very sensitive, they can have allergic reactions. And so even in my own office, I had a little bit too much Glade in there, where one of my colleagues said, wait a minute, it's really bothering my nose. And so even for me, I ran into that problem that I didn't even follow my own instructions. So going forward, I know better. And it's a struggle for me. Even like Yankee candles are absolutely too strong for me to even manage, because it almost cuts off my breathing. So you want to really make sure that you're thinking about that as you're going into these variety of different spaces for these various interviews, and you don't want that to be a distraction and where you feel as if you're the one who's causing that experience. And so as we're thinking about that, first impressions do matter, and you want to eliminate those types of challenges as much as possible. So the variety of types of interviews that you are likely to run into, especially as a high school student, is generally going to be face-to-face interviews, phone interviews, video interviews, and likely group interviews if you're applying to maybe like a local job opportunity. It might be a group interview, but for the most part, they're giving you the opportunity as well at that point. Case interviews, usually for my college students where they are applying for certain finance consulting opportunities, but those are things that you will definitely have to think about a little bit later. And usually the face-to-face phone interviews and video interviews are nowadays considered all part of the process, because used to be where the phone interviews as well as the video interview would just simply be the initial screening process, just seeing whether or not you have the initial qualifications again, or would be a great fit for the organization. But nowadays, of course, being we've been in COVID for about a year now, and so that has turned into an actual final part of the process, especially as you begin to move forward in your college careers very soon. So moving on from that, so the variety of different types of interview questions is the ones on the screen, which happens to be one of my favorite. Tell me a little bit about yourself. And so does anybody want to provide a response to how they would possibly answer the tell me about yourself question? I think it's one of the most exciting questions, to be very frank, but a lot of people give me a variety of different responses. And I apologize, I am not able to see you. So feel free to just unmute yourself and to share your tell me about yourself response before getting started. Does no one have one for me? Very well, that's completely fine. Well, I will actually share a little bit of, is it Julia?
Yeah, I can try my best. Okay. Although it's just like before or after you've like known my qualifications, so I just like describe my personality.
Well, absolutely. So this is generally, they already know your qualifications, but this is going to be likely your first question. So yes, they will have already looked at your resume and cover letter, but they only take a look at that for about 12 seconds. No one actually deep dives into your history that much. And so you really have to revocalize some of that material again. But go ahead there, Julie.
Okay, so hi, I'm Julia. I am a hardworking and dedicated individual. I am a good group worker, and I always look at the bigger picture instead of all of the finer details.
Absolutely. Thank you so much there, Julia. And overall, I really like the way that you responded there. However, one thing that I would probably encourage that you would even add on to that is, so first of all, my name is Julia. I go to school X, Y, and Z. And then going from there, laying out the groundwork for the reason why you are a really great candidate, such as talking a bit more about your projects or other experiences at your school, along with talking a little bit more about your extracurriculars and where you want to go in terms of your overall professional career very soon. And that would be even better than what you're doing right now. And I think you did an excellent job. Thank you so much there, Julia. Anybody else? And I am not able to see, so I will keep going. And if you
wait, come on, someone else, just one more, because Weston is really good at constructive criticism, and if you're gonna learn now.
I can try.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so hi, my name is Lois. I go to Oakton High School. In the past, I've worked with a lot of kids and done a lot of tutoring jobs. In the future, I'm looking to um, probably go into the art field or work on like creative projects and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And so first of all, I think you did a really, really great job, to be very frank and honest with you, especially with you being able to incorporate some of the your high school experience along with your overall professional goal. One thing that I would even potentially consider is just, of course, making it a bit more second nature of what you're saying by practicing on just a bit more. But of course, this is just off the cuff. So, I mean, I can't expect you to be absolutely perfect on that one. And so overall, I think you did a really great job, just as Julia did a really great job. But I would also just recommend that take into consideration thinking about more of your extracurricular activities. And probably whenever I say projects, I know a lot of the times I'm here at Virginia Tech, a lot of our students, they do projects all day, every single day. Virginia Tech students do that all the time. And so thinking back to some of the work that you do at your own school, what projects have you participated in and how has that allowed you to develop into a better student, or allowed you to develop into a better collaborator or a team player within these various groups that you participated in? Those are the things that I'm talking about. And I hope that wasn't a bit confusing whenever I was initially speaking of it, but I know that whenever I'm talking about projects on a college level, it's probably a little bit easier for some of our students. But specifically whenever it comes to the tell me about yourself question, as I like to outline my tell me about yourself question like this. So I like it to be, so first of all, my name is X. And then of course, laying out, okay, I'm go to school here at this high school. And then of course, laying out some of the variety of projects that you participated in. And then things that are most relevant to your overall goals professionally, or at least the program that you want to participate in. If you're going to college, or certain types of scholarship applications that you happen to have some relevancy to. And then from that experience, directly tying in that experience with the, not your experience, but rather your scholarship application or your job application to whatever whatever you've done currently or even in the past. And once you do that, then you have a really great tell me about yourself question. And I think that's the best way to do it if you're a high school student. Because the thing is, it's really great to talk about your overall philosophy. And what do I mean by that? Because a lot of times we say, well, I believe in hard work and dedication, but frankly, companies and organizations, they don't really care what you think, but they want to see based upon your prior as well as your current experiences, how you can be beneficial to them, as well as to the scholarship applications that you're going to be submitting, as well as other things. So whenever you're thinking about it from that perspective, then you're able to go add in more examples as well as details for each of those various questions. And another question is, what are your strengths as well as your weaknesses? And I'll just explain. And this one is very general. So you look at strengths as well as your weaknesses. So your strengths, whenever it looks like that on the screen, or if they're asking that directly of you, then you want to provide 3 strengths, 1 weakness. And the reason why you want to do that is because they're not directly asking you to provide 2 strengths as well as 2 weaknesses. And what you want to do about the weakness is provide a little bit of distance between you and that weakness and showcase how you were able to overcome that. And so what do I mean by the weakness specifically? So one thing that I always do is, because of course, now that I'm a PhD student, also as a working professional, I'm able to say, well, back whenever I was an undergraduate freshman or a freshman in college, I really struggle with public speaking skills. And one thing that I've been able to do is to overcome that is by doing a variety of different presentations, as well as working with a variety of different professionals, et cetera, to be able to overcome that particular obstacle. And then what they're able to do is say, oh, you were working on that back whenever you were a freshman, and now you're a PhD student as well as a working professional to be able to overcome that. And yes, I understand that each of you are high school students, and so you can easily showcase, okay, well, I struggle with communication, but one thing that I've done specifically to overcome that is by being a student, being a participant within the Student Government Association, or being a student being a cheerleader within the local cheerleading squad, or on Mu Alpha Theta if I'm in the math club, or all of those variety of different things that you can participate in that you all could have easily showcased specifically how you worked to overcome, but how you've also struggled. But one thing that you always want to be cognizant of whenever you are in interviews is that you are being consistent. So you don't want to say that you're really perfect at communication whenever you're not, based upon a later question that's being asked of you. But overall, just try to focus whenever you're trying to answer these questions and be more prepared. And so another question is, tell me about a time that you had to deal with a difficult person. It's not really designed for you to really bash your prior supervisor at the local convenience store or at the local hospital where you had the opportunity to be the receptionist for the doctors or the nurses or et cetera. And so it's really giving you an opportunity to share, okay, what was the challenge there? Maybe the conflict was there was a lack of communication between you and your supervisor, and the way in which you were able to overcome that particular obstacle was by being able to say, accept a bit more of that constructive criticism, so to speak, and then you were able to overcome it. And that's how you would be able to bring that to whatever position or opportunity that you're applying to. So hopefully that makes sense. And please feel free to put in the chat whether or not you're understanding what I'm talking about here, and letting me know if you have any questions as well. Also, why are you the best candidate for this position? Generally, what the employers' scholarship applications are looking for specifically are key skill sets that you're able to bring to their organization, or key skill sets that you're able to bring to the opportunity that you're applying to. So what are some key skill sets? So yes, I can say I have a really good, the reason why I think I would be the perfect candidate for this particular position or opportunity would be based upon my critical thinking skills. So then after I say my critical thinking skills, you want to be able to relate it back to a current or your past experience. So such as, well, my critical thinking skills is during the Mu Alpha Theta tournament, doing something related to the math, and how you were able to overcome that particular challenge. Well, maybe not overcome that challenge, because of course your skill set, you have a strong skill set there. And so that could be a way of which you could articulate that experience. And that's how you would be the best candidate, because of your critical thinking skills. And hopefully that makes sense. And then also, why are you interested in the position is just simply trying to re-articulate some of the materials back in the job description or from the scholarship application, and directly tying some of your key experiences, skills, and what you hope to possibly gain from your experiences at whatever institution, university, or from your high school class, whatever, and tying why you would be the perfect person. And so what exactly are employers looking for? So generally, some employers are generally trying to look for some key communication skills, teamwork and interpersonal skills, leadership skills, creativity and problem solving, professionalism, global perspective, or rather ensuring that you have a global perspective, along with technology, or you have a really strong, keen capability of handling technology. And so as you're thinking about some of the key skill sets that you are able to bring to the table and that you can articulate, you want to make sure that you tie in some of these, excuse me, some key skill sets into your argument of why you would be the perfect candidate for these opportunities that are available to you or that you're applying to, as well as whenever you go into these various interview rooms, whenever you're vocalizing it, you really want to make sure that you highlight, yes, I have leadership skills based upon what? I have professionalism based upon what? And so, yes, you think all of these various items are really great, but you really want to be able to show how you've been able to use them. So maybe even if we go to technology, I hear a lot of students maybe say, well, I'm really great with technology. And then you may stop there, but you really want to be able to like dissect, okay, what exactly are you good at in terms of technology? Are you good at, maybe you're a high school student and you already understand C++. Also, maybe you're a student who already understands AutoCAD, MATLAB, all of these variety of technical languages that a lot of our students are gaining now here at Tech, but also something that you're able to bring to the table already and only just enhance your or advance your skill sets whenever you get to the college program, as well as maybe you're trying to look for that a scholarship application. And that's what's going to distinguish you from another candidate. And so that's how you're beginning the process of distinguishing yourself along with other things as well. So that's just something to take into consideration as you're thinking about what's going to allow you to stand apart. I would say the STAR method, but I will skip over that today just because I don't think that will be as relevant right now for you. But of course, if and when you do make it to the college level, I strongly recommend that you come by my office or go by one of your career center's office offices and get one of their career handbooks. Also, if necessary, if I'm still here at Virginia Tech, I would strongly recommend that you should be able to come by my office and I'll help you out. Or go by Dr. Nina Ha's office, because I believe I will have some, hopefully by the fall, in her office. So one thing that I want you to do, as well as you're thinking about these practices or thinking about the interview process specifically, you want to really practice. And the reason why you want to practice as much as possible is because you want to make it perfect as much as possible and believable of what you're talking about. Because a lot of the times, if you're not as well prepared as you should be, you will be stumbling over words, along with using a lot of filler words, a number of other things. Because even for me, I mean, if I don't practice, or if I practice too much, I will be like a robot, and you don't want to be like a robot whatsoever. So we want to eliminate that as much as possible. And so you want to make sure that you practice with your friends, coworkers, family members, and or a mentor. You can even practice with your teacher. I'm sure your teacher will be really excited that you want to practice your interview process with her, or your guidance counselor, or your principal. I'm sure all of those individuals would be very excited to be able to help you out there. Also, focus on addressing some of your key skill sets rather than trying to know all of the questions. So one thing that I always recommend to students is to think about 4 different examples relating to your experience. And what do I mean by that? That could be your education or specific classroom experience, your projects, etc. And then think about all the things that are good, bad, and sometimes in between, and how you can articulate that effectively. Because if we just say, oh, my supervisor was just absolutely terrible, that is not an effective way to articulate in a professional way how you were able to overcome that conflict. Also making sure that you schedule an appointment with your advisor or your teacher to practice. Use Interview Stream if and when you do make it to Virginia Tech or at any other institution. Also reaching out to alums in the industry or at a company via Hokie Mentorship Connect. And those are experiences that you would be able to gain access to if you are here at Virginia Tech, just letting you know. But really for you as a student right now in high school is just really strongly recommending that you reach out to your parents, your family members, and other professionals within your family who can be helpful. So if you already, let's say you want to be a medical doctor or you want to get your PhD, maybe reaching out to a family friend if they already have one, or a family physician if you don't know a family member who has a MD or whatever. So all of those are different experiences that you can gain by simply having that communication open and shadowing these different individuals so that you can get better. And so as you're concluding the interview process here is really wanting to make sure that you ask, is there anything else that I should know about you? Along with, do you have any other questions? And then always making sure that those questions are readily available from your research. And generally as a high school student, I don't necessarily say have a list already completed, unless of course you have a portfolio, or ask your father, your mother, or your family member, or a guardian to, if they would not mind you using their Padfolio, and I'm totally sure that they will not mind whatsoever. So just use that. And then your final steps is, of course, finally just asking about next steps, asking for contact information, especially in this virtual world. You want to be able to say thank you to these different individuals. I'm a big person who really believes on personalizing those thank you notes. Because it really makes people feel special. And one thing that people do whenever they do receive thank you notes is that they will share it with their colleague, and well, usually they will share it with their colleagues, and you're like, okay, this student right here, Julia or Hannah or any of the other students on the call are just how great they are, and especially with just going the extra mile. And we should definitely have that person within our program or have them added to our roster to join our organization for a summer internship. So all of those things are significantly important to take into consideration as well. And so does anybody have any additional questions specifically about the interview process before we move on?
All right, I have a few questions. So from like an interviewer perspective, which is more impressive for like a high school student, like a summer job or an internship?
I think that's always really great questions, to be very frank and honest with you. So one of the things that I will tell you by the time that you're a sophomore, if you're here at Virginia Tech, is that you're going to a lot of the times remove all of that high school experience from your experience. However, I think any experience is really great experience. So I won't necessarily say shadowing or the internship is going to be any different a lot of the time. So for me, I think it's very important to take into consideration if you have the opportunity to shadow and you want to go into a certain field, or like, let's say you want to be a veterinary medicine, well, you need to be shadowing right now, to be honest with you. So just because it's harder to get into vet school than it is to go into medical school, just because it's only like 27 veterinarian schools around the country. So it's very hard. So I would strongly recommend that you're doing your shadowing, you're working in those vet med clinics already. Also, if you have the opportunity as a young person right now to shadow a doctor, just because you want to be a surgeon, I mean, it's probably going to be very difficult unless, of course, you know the family, or you are a child or a niece or nephew right now to go into someone's clinic space just because of COVID. But other than that, right now, I would definitely say do it if you have the opportunity, if you want to do those types of experiences. And also if you want to go into some type of STEM field, or like where you want to go into technology, or like learning AutoCAD, or learning as much software as possible now, I would strongly recommend it. It adds value. I promise you, it adds value whenever you get to college, and you're not going to be the one that's struggling with C++ or AutoCAD, MATLAB, all of these other technical languages that are significantly important. And hopefully
Right, and my next question is, so if we're doing if there's multiple interviews for the applying process, should I avoid being repetitive, or should I just repeat all the same information to the different people that are interviewing me?
I think that's a very good question. I think there's a point where you're being too repetitive, so at points. However, if you don't have as much, I mean, as a high school student, you're not going to have as much experience as, let's say, or should be at a third year, fourth year college student. So you should have a variety of different experiences and a variety of different internships, hopefully, at that point. However, as a high school student right now, I mean, you're not going to be in an hour and a half, likely, interview process right now. Mm-hmm. 30 minutes, where you will likely have some time, or maybe 30 minutes to 45 minutes as you're preparing for a scholarship interview or something of that nature. And like, you can be repetitive a little bit, but one thing that I generally recommend is having 4 different examples and experiences that you want to be able to touch on, so that, I mean, I would say more than that, if you call those experiences all the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the reason is because, of course, you're going to have to talk about that ugly, but you're going to have to showcase how you were able to overcome that particular obstacle, and you are going to be able to bring those skill sets to that organization that you're applying.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome there, Julia. Anyone else before we move on?
I have just a quick question. How do you know if you're being overly confident, or if you're selling yourself short?
Absolutely. Well, that's a really great one. I mean, that's a really great one. Well, the overly confident is the best way to learn whether or not you're being overly confident is practicing with your family members, and whether or not you're saying certain things that would be perceived as inappropriate, or at least coming off as inappropriate. Let me put it that way. And one thing that I generally recommend is you practice as much as you possibly can, just to learn whether or not that is the case. And the other question, Sherry, can you possibly repeat that one for me one more time, because I had a really for that
if
one.
You're selling yourself short.
Oh, absolutely. I think, well, I think that sometimes it's a hard situation to just say, because I know whenever I was a college, well, like an undergraduate student, I would say, well, I'm just doing this. And well, then you're selling yourself short, because I mean, all experiences are really great experiences, and no one's career trajectory is going to be the same thing. And just because, I mean, some people will come from a first generation household where they are also, well, all first generation are not low income, but also, like, if you're first generation and you also come from a low income background, then your experience is going to be different than someone else a lot of the times whenever you go to college. And so overall, you might say certain things that are selling yourself short. And then I've also seen other students just sell themselves short, and you don't have to do that. And the way that you do that is practicing as much as possible. And so my big thing here today is really practice with as much as you possibly can. And whenever I practice myself, I mean, I will go a week straight where my parents will have a list of questions, and whenever I randomly call them, and they will ask me, well, Weston, tell me about a difficult situation that you dealt with during your experiences, blah, blah, blah. And then I will have to respond. And then, of course, getting into that routine, then of course it's going to sound very much second nature, and then it's not going to be as you're not going to be waiting as much. Well, I don't know, but hopefully you understand what I mean whenever I'm saying that. I hope.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Any other? Oh, go ahead there, Hannah.
If I don't mind, may I ask, how do you know when you're informing when you're giving too much information and too little information to the informer, or the interviewer, sorry. How do you know when to be specific and when to be a little vague at some questions?
Absolutely. I think that's a really, really good one to ask. But again, it always goes back to the practice. But when a lot of the times for the tell me about yourself question, I think that's generally at your range. I mean, at your classification right now as a high school student, it's not going to be as lengthy as a college student for the most part. But that's the reason why I say 40 seconds for the tell me about yourself question probably will be your lengthiest response. However, is there a possibility that you're going to receive a question that you can just simply elaborate a little bit more on? Absolutely, such as, okay, tell me about a time that you had a difficult situation. Well, you want to make sure that you fully elaborate upon that experience, because of course, if you give too little information, then of course they are going to think about, okay, well, really, what really happened here? And were you the potential cause? And so you want to prepare those difficult, especially those difficult behavioral related questions a bit more, just because you want to make sure that you're cognizant of the language that you're using, as well as making sure that you're somewhat consistent from the prior questions. Because me personally, let me pull out my list that I love so dearly here. And 1 second here. So I will ask you, so let's say, tell me about your strengths as well as your weaknesses. And we go from your strengths as well as your weaknesses. And so you tell me that, oh, I'm really perfect at communication. And then down here, whenever I say, tell me about a conflict that you've had with a supervisor before. And then of course, you don't necessarily showcase how you were a good communicator. And then I was going to showcase some inconsistencies there. And I think that is going to be somewhat some people's problem. I mean, I see it all the time. And so that's a problem. And for me, I mean, I'm looking at me as if I'm the potential employer here, as well as the organization that you're likely applying to, as well as the program that you happen to be applying to as well. I'm not going to be convinced by your argument, what you're trying to say, especially if it's consistently being done. So what I like to do is ask another difficult question that's right after that. Well, tell me about a time that you had to make an unpopular decision. And so those are going to basically go around in circles. It's literally the same question, but under a different term. And so under those types of experiences, people who are interviewing, they generally are doing it for their part of their job. And so they're used to people fabricating as well as expunging their experiences. And we don't want necessarily you to run into those types of issues. And so that's my thoughts there, Hannah. Any other questions there, Hannah, or anyone else?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
So you mentioned practice a lot and how it's important not only when it comes to content, but also your physical presentation. But at that point, how do you know if you've overdone it, or is there a possibility that you do where it becomes too rehearsed at that point?
There are times where certain people are very much well rehearsed, but that's only if they're focusing heavily on the questions at hand. So yes, are there questions that you're likely are 100% of the time going to receive that you need to be prepared for? Absolutely. Tell me about yourself. You need to be well prepared for that, because it's so vague that you can go all over the place. And I've heard students even mention their hobbies and what they enjoy on that. That's good, but that's not what they're looking for. You don't have to tell me that you like chicken wings or like to play a certain instrument. However, if your instrument, you can directly, well, instruments actually, that's a little bit different, frankly. So if you play the violin or a piano or any other instrument, that's actually a really good positive. You can tie that into your work. So let's say if you're a technical student, or not a technical student, but a student who is majoring in business information technology here at Tech. And then of course you tie in engineering, or let's say you have engineering and then you play an instrument. oh, that's very interesting, because we don't necessarily sometimes see engineering students as being very, very creative. And so that means you have a different type of brain, at least that's the way I like to look at it, in that you can showcase to the organization like, okay, very well, that's very impressive. And maybe you'll be able to add value to this specific project that they're working on. And so each and every time, I'm looking at it from those different perspectives and strategies so that you can be successful when you're arguing why you are the best candidate for the job, but also the position and how you can advance within that position. So that's how I like to think about it. And hopefully that answers your question there, Ariel.
I'm sorry, I have another question.
Go ahead.
So it just popped up in my mind. When you're getting interviewed and asked about like what experience or like what projects you do, is it a good idea to ask or like to inform the interviewer that maybe like there are ones that you wanted to do, or does that kind of sound like you weren't like you didn't really reach for your goal? If that question makes sense. Do you want me to reiterate what I said?
I think I got. Oh well, I might ask you to reiterate it. So is it okay to tell them about the jobs that you're looking for?
Kind of, but like let's say I wanted to do this science experiment, or well, that's kind of like. But let's say like there was these internships that you were like looking forward to, but maybe you didn't get, or the opportunity, like you didn't get the opportunity or you didn't get in. Like, is it a good idea to still inform the interviewer like, oh, I was very interested in this or so and such. So maybe they like have an aspect of like, they have an idea of what you may look forward to in the future, or like what background you kind of like, whether that's medical or like liberal arts. Or I mean, science or liberal arts, yeah.
I think it's not in that case, not if they're just trying to share in the tell me about yourself question, but in terms of like, sometimes I will ask, can you describe to me a time that you failed and how you were able to overcome it? And so that might be an experience. And then a lot of times people hear failure and they just go to the worst thing ever. So think about it as a setback. We all had setbacks in our professional lives. Also, as high school students, you had a setback. And so that could be a setback where you wanted to join this particular internship or shadowing experience or leadership conference or et cetera, and that we just didn't get it. You know, I can think back to some of my own experiences that I did get and then that I didn't get, and that was considered a setback, and how you respond to it is really what's most important.
Thank you.
I have one more question. So you said there was like a question like, what are your strengths and weaknesses? How do I not make my weaknesses seem that weak without like completely playing them off?
Well, I don't think you're necessarily trying to play them off per se, but you want to be very cognizant. Well, that's the reason why you want to prepare your weaknesses ahead of time. And they're going to ask about it, and they might ask it in a different way. But most of the time they're going to be just very explicit, first of all, just trying to understand, okay, what are your weaknesses? What is your strengths? Because of course you should have that well prepared. Your strengths, you're gonna blow out the water. And then whenever you get to your weaknesses, again, I think it's very important to put some distance between you and that weakness. And so I like to focus on the easier ones first, and then of course work your way to the more difficult as they approach very difficult questions. But you want to plan the difficult ahead of time. And so for me, I think communication is the easier one. But communication can be very bad if you don't necessarily showcase how you overcame it, such as public speaking. That's probably the easiest one I think I've ever come up with. And I personally, I use it during my own personal, professional interviews. And so, and then I always say freshman year, you know, it's pretty simplified. And then also whenever, I think that answers your question, but I'll keep going on forever. So go ahead.
Thank you. I think that's it.
Okay. And it was another question, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, there, go ahead.
Yeah, so based on the types of interviews that you showed us earlier, could you briefly explain what case interviews are?
Absolutely. Well, I'm not a big expert on that whatsoever, but usually the case interviews are for like finance consulting firms or consulting firms in general. And so what takes place there is they will provide you a technical case ahead of time, or they will provide it, well, they will give you the option to do some research ahead of time. And usually for an undergraduate, well, if you just received your bachelor's degree, for let's say and you're looking for a job at JP Morgan, they will typically send you in your email, okay, these are the different items that you need to research ahead of time before your interview. And then at the time of your interview, you will receive your case. So let's say you're trying to understand, let's say you're going to be consulting for Delta Airlines. And so you might be trying to figure out, okay, the economy class, business class, and first class. And then of course, trying to figure out, okay, how can this company make more money if we get rid of the 2 seats in first class, maybe. You know, those are types of things that you're going to be trying to figure out, but you're going to be looking at it in a much more cost benefit analysis, et cetera, as a college student. So it's going to be a whole lot more thinking than what I'm providing right now. I'm not a business person. So you'll learn that in the process. And so that'll be important for you. I would say definitely come to our office, but one thing that we'll do is just try to refer you to some of the different videos that might be available, such as CarMax. I went to CarMax's case interview training just to learn a little bit more about how that works. And I mean, it's very interesting and it's very tough, but I mean, if you get that, you'll be able to easily go from one consulting job to the next. And it's a very good opportunity, I have to say.
Thank you.
You're very welcome there, Ariel. And for, anybody else have any other questions? I don't think there are any additional questions. Well,
Actually, both Anushka and Hannah.
Okay, well, go ahead. Either one first.
Okay, I guess I'll go first. Hi, this is kind of like a broader question, but I just want to know, like, do you have any tips in general for like how to secure an interview? Because I know you mentioned earlier how like being prepared is really important, but are there like any other tips that you would like recommend?
Absolutely. I was just going to get onto that, but I know we're running closer and closer. Well, we're running out of time. But some of the different job search resources and tools that I was going to recommend, of course, would have been once you all get to college is we have, specifically here at Virginia Tech, I'll say, we have Going Global, Career Shift, also a Handshake is really great, but some additional ones outside of Virginia Tech that I love, that I really, really love. I think high school students, such as yourselves, definitely need a LinkedIn. And so one thing that I was going to do, if I had additional time before you all get off today, I will try to pull up or give you the link to, what is it called? LinkedIn for Students, and it will showcase to you how you need to develop your LinkedIn profile. Yes, you're not going to be where a lot of these different profiles are right now, but you're only going to slowly start progressing towards that. Because how many of you are seniors right now? Or juniors?
I'm pretty sure all of us here are sophomores.
And well, that's perfect. And so in the next couple of years, yours will be directly where it needs to be. And so that's something that's crucially important. And then of course, you can secure internships. One thing, it's going to be harder, I'll say, for a high school student to obtain an internship, at least through like the formal going onto a certain system and looking for that. However, as I would say, like shadowing, going to these different conferences, if you are given the opportunity. For me personally, I went to Mississippi Governor School. I went to Hobie, like all these different leadership conferences whenever I was much younger. But if you like, let's say you're in like a big extracurricular program, like cheerleading or Mu Alpha Theta, I just say Mu Alpha Theta a lot just because I was on the math team or whatever. And so, but I just think those are really good things for you to be able to participate in and be part of. Or if you're in tennis or anything that I'm not thinking about, 4-H, if you're in that, or anything like that, you can continue to gain experience to what you can. And then also, as I mentioned before, like if you're a vet med type of person who wants to go into that type of field, go ahead and start shadowing now. I mean, literally now, just because it will be very difficult trying to gain all that experience during your coursework at Virginia Tech or elsewhere. And then also, if you're trying to be a medical doctor, going ahead, getting those unique experiences now. And I don't mean unique experiences that are just going to simply look good for your medical school application, because there was a student, I was listening to a panel the other day where a student had the perfect MCAT score, didn't get into this program just because, of course, he didn't have anything that really distinguished him from other candidates. Only thing that he did was he went to school and he made perfect grades. Well, that's good, but all medical school students have perfect grades, and they all look very similar. But and so one thing that you want to make sure that you're doing is, okay, if you have the opportunity to do the Special Olympics, now it also will, and then you're able to do that throughout college. Also, maybe if you're able to gain a very different type of different major, but of course, making sure that you talk to an advisor before you make that decision, of course. And so those are things that might be important that really will distinguish you from other candidates later on whenever it's time for you to apply.
So maybe just one last question. Anushka, did you have something to add or ask?
I didn't have a question, but let me think. Like, do you know any sort of like opportunities that maybe don't look as good to like possible interviewers, like some things that aren't as like impressive, I guess?
Say maybe don't look good for interviewers.
Sorry, what?
Did you say what doesn't look good for interviewers?
Yeah.
Okay. Lack of preparedness is very much looks very bad, and then also bashing individuals looks very bad, very bad. And I mean, just because what we're thinking, because you have to think about it, the individuals that you're interviewing with, they're wondering whether or not you're going to be a good fit for the company. I mean, they might not tell you that, but of course, we're trying to figure out, okay, are we going to want to take you out to lunch, or would you like to go to lunch with the company, or would you like to go to, would you be a good fit for the organization that you're going into? All of those things are very much important, and they're going to make decisions based on the things that you're saying. And then if you're just bashing a person, and then they're like, okay, he or she's going, or other is going to bash me whenever I'm not around. And so those are things that you want to be cognizant of whenever you're making decisions about whatever you're saying.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, Anushka. And also, I mean, I apologize that I did not get to the opportunity to finish the rest of the presentation, specifically relating to the actual job search, but hopefully sometime soon I'll be able to give you all some of that some more information. But also, I will also plug that we also have a couple more panel discussions that actually high school students are participating in. And so if you all are interested, I will see if I can actually send you all that panel information, because we're working in conjunction with College Access Collaborative, and I think that would actually be perfect for this group.
Weston, you can send it to me and I'll pass it along.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your advice. I actually did have one more for some of you, because some of you may not have real either McDonald's job experiences or any type of those types of experiences. But I think, Lois, you mentioned babysitting, right? Or yard work. I'm just thinking of skills, right? So what does it take to babysit? You have to be responsible, right? A parent is entrusting you with their child. So, making sure that you're on a schedule. Lois, you also talked about being creative, right? So are you doing art projects with these children? Because that counts as creativity. So what I want you to think about are also making sure that that whatever types of, even chores at home, right, can count as experiences. What are the skill sets you've gained, right? And that's what I want you to, what Weston was talking about were any of these types of skill sets that you take responsibility, right? And give an example, right? Every single one of these skill sets, right? Make sure to have an example to go along with it so that you can actually explain it and describe it. And so that's the thing that I want to sort of for you to take into consideration as well, right? So these are aspects to think about for you all to be part of campus, connectors, right? I think that you've taken a very big leadership step to being in an organization. If you have a leadership role in a student organization, that also counts. Am I making sense, Weston? You're the career person, I'm not. So
You're absolutely right. I mean, I think babysitting, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine doing that myself. I'm terrible. Don't get me wrong, I love children, but I like them with their parents and family. I'm terrible at it. But overall, that's some key skill sets, because if you're babysitting, let's say 5 children, that's a full-time job. One is a full-time job, and then 5, I mean, wow. So absolutely, I completely agree.
And we'll try to do a few more of these maybe next semester too. So we'll keep at it as well. But thank you so much. If you have any other questions, Weston, do you want to share your email? Is that possible?
Absolutely. Let me go ahead and do that. And then also I did add the LinkedIn for high school students on here. That is just a PDF so that you can take a look at that later on. And if you are consulting with your parents, whether or not it's okay for you to get a LinkedIn, strongly recommend it. Let me put my email here.
So thank you everybody for coming, and have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and please stay safe. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording now.
Thank you so much.